Hi everyone, welcome back to geometry class. I hope you had a nice time in the snow this week. I know I did and my dog did. Just as a side note, if you hear my dog barking, don't be alarmed. She's just really excited about geometry, so just ignore her. So today we're going to be talking about the architecture of Frank Lloyd Wright and understanding the concepts of parallel and perpendicular. This book is written by Janey, Levy. Here is a picture of Frank Lloyd Wright, one of the most famous architects in America, basically. You may have heard of some of his buildings before. Frank Lloyd Wright was born in Richland Center, Wisconsin in 1867, and he began his work as an architect around 1886. His career spanned more than 70 years. During this time, Wright designed more than 1,000 structures, including houses, offices, hotels, churches, schools, libraries, and museums. Many people think that Wright was the greatest American architecture of the 20th century. He rejected the most popular architectural styles of the day, which are based on European architecture of earlier centuries, and he devoted himself to creating a new, distinctly American architecture. This meant the houses should be of modest scale that people would actually afford and would feel comfortable in. The new architecture should also be in harmony with the landscape, he believed. To Wright, this meant it should be in harmony with the order governing the universe, which he believed followed the rules of geometry. Wright tried to recreate this order in his buildings by emphasizing parallel and perpendicular forms. So, before I go and explain what perpendicular and parallel forms are, I want you to kind of just sketch out what you think those two terms mean. And if you just give it a try. If you don't know, of course, we're going to be going over it because that's what today's lesson is about, so don't worry, but just give it your best go. Okay, so these two lines up here are parallel lines. So basically, parallel lines extend in the same direction. They're always the same distance apart, so these two areas are the same distance apart, and they never meet. So these two lines will never cross each other. These two lines over here cross each other, and they form 90 degrees. So here, two lines come together, form a 90-degree angle, which means that they are perpendicular. So, as we will go through this book, we'll see that Frank Lloyd really likes to use parallel and perpendicular lines and forms in order to design his structures. So he doesn't do anything like super crazy with curves. He really just likes lines. Parallel lines and perpendicular lines. So here is one of the first houses that he designed. The Winslow House. So we can see how Wright used parallel and perpendicular forms to create a new American architecture by looking at this first house that he designed after opening his architectural firm in 1893. That year, Wright designed a house for William Winslow in River Forest, Illinois. Wright chose a basic geometric form for the Winslow House. Can you guess which form that would have been? If you had to pick one form. Yep, you guessed it. He used a simple rectangular box. By definition, a rectangular box is composed of parallel and perpendicular planes. Opposite sides are parallel to each other, and perpendicular lines meet each other. So this side line and this top line are perpendicular. Wright also favored horizontal structures, and the Winslow House is wider than it is tall. So this house is horizontal. If, let's say, the house was taller than it is wide, that would be kind of like a skyscraper, and that would be vertical. So this would be a vertical building, but Frank Lloyd Wright likes to specialize in horizontal buildings, so it's longer than it is tall. So, Wright further emphasized its horizontal qualities by using different colors for the first and second stories. So you can see he used a long horizontal yellow band on the bottom, and then a long horizontal brownish band above that. parallel light bands across the lower edge of the roof, as you can see here in yellow, and between the first and second stories, as you can see here in this white band, emphasize the horizontal quality of the house as well. The perpendicular lines of the white window frames and the large white rectangular surrounding the entrance draws our eyes to these features. So, you can see that these windows are made up of a lot of perpendicular lines that come together and form 90-degree angles. So essentially, every window and door in a house, or this house at least, are made up of perpendicular lines and parallel lines. So these two lines that are across from each other are parallel. These two on the top and bottom are parallel, but if they come and meet at a corner, then they're perpendicular to each other. So, Frank Lloyd Wright really liked to use perpendicular and parallel lines in terms of the form of the house. He loved to design the houses, obviously, but he also really liked to design the interior of the houses. That was his big thing. He designed houses and buildings from, start to finish and included every single detail, which is pretty cool. So this is talking about the interior of the Martin house, which is one of his famous houses. It shows the interiors. So this photograph is of a room in the house that shows two art glass windows whose patterns of intersecting horizontal and vertical lines repeat the lines of the house itself. Unlike most people, Wright thought the windows as part of the wall rather than simply holes in it. He called windows light screens and made them part of the overall design of the house. There are also two chairs designed by Wright. In these chairs, all the angles are right angles and all the surfaces are flat planes. The legs and backs of the chairs are precise vertical lines that are parallel to each other. Between the uprights on each side of the backs are several narrow strips of wood, all parallel to the uprights. The seats of the chairs are horizontal planes perpendicular to the legs and the backs. Such chairs were probably not comfortable to sit in, but they are consistent with Wright's philosophy that all parts of the house should be in harmony with the geometric order of nature. So, I don't know if you could see it, but you can see in this diagram that there are no curves. There's essentially all lines. In the chairs, in the windows, and they all come together and form right angles and are made up of parallel and perpendicular lines. So I think that's pretty cool. It just makes it seem like everything in the building works together and is super cohesive. Okay, so this is the last building that we'll be talking about, and you may have heard of it before. This one's actually found in Pennsylvania. It's called Falling Water. So I think it's on the middle to west side of Pennsylvania. So in 1934, Wright began designing a house that has been called the most famous house in the world. The house, located in Mill Run, Pennsylvania, is called Falling Water because it is built over a waterfall in Bear Run Creek. People who hired Wright loved to picnic at the waterfall and asked Wright to design a house that would be perfectly suited for the spot. The wooded hills and ravine made the site different from the wide open prairies Wright loved. For the house to be in harmony with the landscape, something other than a prairie house was needed. Wright created a daring design. Just as the rocks at the top of the waterfall stick out like a shelf over the ravine below, Wright designed the house to project from the hillside above the waterfall. This makes the house appear almost as if it's floating in space. So, you can see this waterfall. I don't know if any of you have ever been, but I've actually been once. This waterfall runs like right through the bottom floor of the house. It's very cool. And like the text was saying, these parallel levels, I guess, were supposed to represent parallel rocks in nature, which is pretty cool. So, Falling Water looks as if it is made of several flat slabs piled on top of each other, much as the rocks on the hillside below it are layered on top of one another. So again, parallel layers. The slabs vary in size and shape, just as rocks do. However, Wright took the geometric order that he saw hidden in the irregular forms of the rocks and made the slabs of falling water into regular rectangles. So this is a blown up of a stamp that the U.S. government made at one point. The sides of the rectangles vary in length, but the sides of each rectangular slab run parallel to those of the slabs above and below it, creating an ordered structure in the dwelling. Smooth, uninterrupted walls give each parallel layer of falling water a strong horizontal quality. So here again, he really likes horizontalness. As you can see, these yellow bands are very long this way and very short this way. On one side of the house, stone chimneys rise perpendicular to the horizontal slabs, much as the trees rise from the surrounding landscape. So that's kind of hard to see, but here are actually some vertical elements that he used. So these vertical chimneys run perpendicular to these horizontal slabs. Yeah. Essentially, that is the gist of Frank Lloyd Wright. This book is very long, so if you want to borrow it and look at some other houses and some other diagrams that he did, you're more than welcome to. But again, they all kind of express his love of perpendicular forms and parallel forms. And it's just really cool that he used geometry in his designs. Like, that was almost like his second love next to architecture was geometry. So yes, very cool. So if you want to, you can, look around your house and see if your house has perpendicular or parallel forms to it. If it's, what you can try and figure out if you think it's a horizontal house, if it's more of a vertical house. Yeah, it's very fun. So like I said, if you want to borrow this, feel free. If you have any questions about parallel and perpendicular, just let me know. Thanks.